малку специфично интервју, не толку заради темата, повторно ќе ги третираме општините, само на малку различен начин, тоа ќе слушнеме искуство од една општина која што е малку подалеку од Прилеп. Значи, одиме до Соединетите Американски држави, Луизијана или Њу Орлеанс. И со нас тука е Алисон Порт, шеф на кабинетот на советничката Лесли Харис, советничка во Њу Орлеанс, Луизијана. Алисон, ти благодарам што прифати да разговараш со нас на оваа посета кратка која што имаш во Прилеп. И за почеток би те прашал накратко да ми раскажеш како е еден твој типичен ден на шеф на кабинет, затоа што кај нас во нашата легислатива, во нашиот систем, како функција го немаме, тоа како позиција го немаме во општините.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. So let me give you some background on the way the structure of governance in New Orleans is. We have about 400,000 people. There's a mayor who runs the administration, like here, and then our city council is a total of 7 members. Not 27, just 7. So it's divided, our city, the geography is divided in a map with 5 independent districts, and that's 5 of the council members. And then the remaining 2 are at large, and they represent the full city. My job is representing council member Leslie Harris, who's District B. I'm her chief of staff. So you mentioned describe a typical day. It's tough to do because there's no typical day. Every day is a little bit different, but I would say most often what I will do is spend some time answering the phone. We have a staff of about, I think it's 5 or 6 right now. And even though our council member is also a lawyer, she works in her council job full-time too. So all of us will answer the phone. We constantly have constituents calling for help with light or homes, houses, or Wi-Fi or something. So a lot of the times it's just answering the phone and responding. I will often also read ordinances that other council members are proposing or that we are working on. Clementina can tell you that a big part of my job too is focusing on helping our unhoused population in New Orleans. So almost every day I will do something related to that. Sometimes it's going out to visit people where they're living or working with the health department and business to come up with solutions, even sometimes the governor and his office to come up with solutions for a systemic solution. So that's just some of the things.
Значи, комплетно различен систем него македонскиот, многу помалку советници во советот на општина Њу Орлеанс. Дали сега ме интересира затоа што пред да го снимаме ова интервју беше на состанок во општина Прилеп. Видовме дека имаше средба со градоначалникот, со претседателката на советот, неколку советници. Дали ги разменивте овие различни типови на локални самоуправи и што би можело да ни кажете каква е нивната реакција, затоа што слушам дека таму во Њу Орлеанс сте многу помалку луѓе вклучени како функции. Дали е ние како помали средини тука, дали може би таа редукција применлива и кај нас?
As to a reduction in council members, I don't know, because I think it depends how much of their professional time they have to dedicate to the job. Maybe it's not the best to reduce the number, or if they have staff. But I do think it would be helpful for the council and for the residents if there were some sort of district-based system like we have in New Orleans, so that individuals know, okay, this is the person I can call for help, rather than let me try all 27. And I understand from our conversation with the council members that certain of them have areas of expertise, like budget or utilities, and that's useful too. We have that as well, where our council members will chair a various committee or be seated on a committee. So I don't think one means you can't have the other. anyway, I think the district-based system would help. On the second question, what was the response? I would say we had about 5 council members in the room. They were generally receptive. It was an hour and a half long discussion, just sharing what was in New Orleans, and they appreciated the opportunity to share back what practices they engaged in here. One that stuck out to me was the use of urban hubs, which operate similarly to our neighborhood organizations in New Orleans, where there's general community and a way to reach and have a liaison with your council member. Now, I don't know if they actually function. I don't know, but if that is an effective way for council members to hear input, I think that's a great practice.
Ти си веќе 8 години во градскиот совет во Њу Орлеанс. Кажи ми, од кога си там, како овој состав што е тоа што го променивте во начинот на функционирање на совет, во пристапот кон носењето на јавни одлуки, на јавни политики?
I would say, I think a little bit it depends on the individual council member and then the collection of council members. But overall, I would say that the council has been increasingly mindful of hearing and wanting to respond to emergent issues. That's a big reason in my office, in Councilmember Harris's office, that we focus on homelessness and on housing on the whole, is because there's a huge income disparity in the city, and it means cost of living, especially because of housing, is just impossible for so many residents. In years prior, because this is the 3rd council group that I've worked for, no one took that on the council. The ideology was, oh, well, that's a job of the mayor, and that's a job of the state to take care of. Whereas now, I think members of the council are more willing to step in to fill the gaps where either the mayor isn't responding or the infrastructure doesn't exist.
Следното прашање ми беше, најверојатно сега се поклопува со претходниот одговор, кои биле во тие промени најголемите предизвици кои што ги имавте да ги направите тие промени? Дали имаше пречки од некаде, да стои некаде до некаде префрлање на надлежности?
You know, what we're now doing goes well beyond that. It's really performing the functions of a mayoral administration. And naturally with that, there comes tension if maybe some of the leadership feels like we're stepping on toes in the administrative offices. Luckily, we haven't encountered that. We have great partners who are the department heads, but we are naturally getting into their jobs. And there's a division of power that's laid out in our city charter, which is like a constitution, that veers into. I think to me that's probably the biggest challenge.
Едно од најважните работи кои што ме интересира и сакам да го слушнам твоето мислење и да ни пренесеш како искуство од Њу Орлеанс, особено за нас како млада демократија, кои се најважните чекори кога се работи подготовка на нова легислатива?
To start at the very beginning, first we need to identify a problem. Like normally when we have an ordinance or new legislation, it's to solve for an issue that's not being addressed or that's inadequate in our city code. Sometimes we figure that out through ourselves as an office, through observing that something isn't working. Sometimes the media will point it out through stories. Sometimes we'll have constituents call and call and call so much that we can identify a trend that needs to be addressed. That would be step 1. Step 2 is having a conversation with the council member and our other members on our staff to say, hey, we think this is an issue that's bubbled up so much so that it warrants a response, and in particular a response from you as a council member, because of course there's 7 members, some things aren't politically popular and they just frankly take effort. One thing my boss says a lot, Councilmember Harris, is that we cannot be the office of everything. but we are the office of everything because we pick up a lot of lost causes that other offices don't have the capacity or the drive, I guess, or ability to deal with. So we'll make a decision as an office, but certainly from Councilmember Harris, to invest in something, in a new ordinance, say. Then once I receive that okay, I'll often do research as to what other cities do that works well, particularly if they're in Louisiana, because then we know they're bound by the same state rules that we are dealing with. But we'll look nationally. Sometimes we'll reach out and talk to people in other cities or regions. Oftentimes we'll talk to nonprofits or think tanks in an area and say, hey, do you have any sample legislation, or give me feedback on some ideas. That process can last as long as it needs to, I would say, depending on the urgency of the crisis we're dealing with. And then the next thing would be actually sitting down and drafting the language, which I usually do. We have a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, but we have a lawyer that serves all of the city council, where you can send, we actually have 3 now, where we can send our legislation for ideas and feedback and whatnot. And then once we feel like it's perfected, although there's another phrase, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Sometimes you just move forward. Then we'll work with other council members and sometimes the mayor and the community to socialize the idea and say, what do you think? Is this okay? And if it's not okay, we'll make more adjustments along the way. Procedurally.
Дали консултацијата на заедницата, на граѓаните, на жителите е нешто кое што го правите задолжително кога се носи нова легислатива, или е ако треба, или е кој популарно само?
Everything I've said so far is not legally mandated, but it's necessary to have good policy. Oftentimes when there's been a big important new law change, some council members have tried to introduce, or the mayor via the council have tried to introduce a law change and faced uproar, community uproar. One example I can point to is the prior mayor introduced a law that would require cameras on the outside of bars, the nightclubs, to help with security because crime was an issue. And there was a huge pushback from the entire hospitality community, which drives our economy. So much so that it was, no matter how much the mayor explained, they couldn't walk back all the concerns. So that mayor had to pull the new law change, start back at the drawing board, and then begin with anew with ideas, this time from the community. But from then on it was tainted because the trust was lost.
Ајде сега малку да ни раскажеш за како се почна и како се направи целата кампања за... Вие сте најголемата поддршка на Харис за проектот за бездомништво, за помагање на луѓето кои што не можат да си дозволат кирија или хипотека за кои ќе да земат кредит, да купуват кои видов дека тука станува збор за пренасочување на 2% од буџетот, не нови даноци. Како тргна цела таа приказка за да им се помогне тие луѓе?
Yeah. Okay, so I mentioned before that all the council members, the city, knows that there's a housing crisis. One way that we responded, like I mentioned before, was address the homelessness crisis. Another way is through the Housing Trust Fund, which you mentioned is a mandatory dedication of 2% of the annual budget that will go into a reserve fund for specified uses, generally to create and maintain affordable housing units, largely rental, but they can be homeowner too. The way we came to that was through consulting with other parts of the mayor's government and consulting with nonprofits who brought to our attention, hey, we notice that regularly in budget meetings and in budget ordinances, housing gets cut because it doesn't have the support present in the room. It's not as politically popular as some of the other things like, I don't know, supporting businesses, say. So from then, it was kind of like I was mentioning before, Councilmember Harris was interested. I did a lot of research. And then we went about something called a ballot initiative to add the 2% requirement to our city charter, which is like the Constitution. Clementina was a huge help in that last year. It had to go before the voters, and to everyone's surprise, even though we did hard work in a campaign, we didn't expect it to pass as successfully as it did, and we won with 75% of the public vote. So what that means is beginning in 2026, with the 2026 budget, there is a requirement that the city pass or set aside 2% or an amount equal to 2% of our general funds. There's a whole mechanism and framework that we developed in city ordinance as to how this will be implemented with community input. So that part is in process right now, but we expect to see the allocation and the dedication beginning in 2026.
Тогаш, што би им препорачале на општините кои што се со ограничени ресурси, еве, кајва се со бездомништвото, ама ние тука го имаме со домувањето сериозно, тој проблем е особено одредени заедници го имаат. Како да се придне на тој проблем од страна тие општини за да се објасни на населението дека може на таков начин да се помогне тие луѓе?
I think in New Orleans, we luckily, I guess, had a little bit of a political mandate to act, because even though this wasn't a popular thing to do for the wealthier parts of the community, enough other people spoke up and said, here's what's happening, I can't survive, I'm going to have to leave the city. So it almost gave the council cover, but also a push to take action, even if that's not what they intended to do from the get-go. I think if there's an issue that is affecting only part of the community, but still a major problem, I think what you're suggesting is right, that it takes some education of the people who aren't affected to appreciate why the council or the mayor needs to delve into that issue. And sometimes it's just general education and people don't understand because they aren't affected. Other times it's helping folks see why this will affect them, you know, making it almost into a selfish thing. If ultimately you expect that the housing crisis here, say, will become bigger because of gentrification and affect even more middle-income folks, or you expect it will affect the economic development of the city, something that makes it relevant to the other people so that they can feel bought in and like it's also important.
Кажи ми, тебе што те мотивира да работиш во локална самоуправа? Веќе 8 години си таму, што те вози секојдневно да станеш и да работиш во интерес на заедницата?
I will say I have never not worked in public sector. I have worked in 2 restaurants as a waiter in college, but otherwise I knew this is what I wanted to do, whether it's in nonprofit or direct service or working in government and policy, which is the avenue that I ended up going toward. To me, what I saw when I started working in nonprofits with direct service, as a teenager, I would say I worked a lot with kids with special needs and adults with special needs, so I wanted to start my own nonprofit. But eventually I saw even having my own nonprofit wouldn't get what I needed to feel fulfilled and to help the community in a way I saw I could contribute, which is why I moved toward government, which is to create bigger policy solutions that can affect systemic issues and make them better. I would say that remains my motivation. I love New Orleans dearly. It matters so much to me, and I feel a sense of honor that I can serve the community and be responsive to what people need, but also be proactive as my own community member or as someone who knows people in different parts of the city and society to help our city grow better. This is maybe the first job I've ever had where I have never once dreaded getting up and going to work. And there have been some hard days, some very hard days. but that doesn't, I've never once thought it was unimportant. And in particular, I love working for Leslie. She really values getting good work done and making things better. And she came into office never having worked in the public sector. She's an intellectual property attorney, very well regarded from the private sector. She worked at a private university as chief of staff. She entered this job because her friends told her, you could do better than the guy that's there. And they were right. They were absolutely right. She, I think, was surprised at what the job actually entailed. Nonetheless, she really, like me, feels privileged to be in a position of serving people and doing the most good with what we have. And so I'm all too happy to be working with her as a manager, a boss, who I feel very supported in all the ways I need, but more so with and for Leslie as a council member. She's my council member. So I truly think she's doing the right thing and our office is doing the right thing, and it makes me forever motivated to keep at it.
Што би им препорачала на младите кои што сакаат да го работат тоа, кои што се сега да речеме во средно училиште или на факултет, и што би им порачала на нашите советници кои што се веќе имаме и тука со подолг стаж, како треба да го работат оваа работа, каков однос треба да имат кон заедницата, кон граѓаните, воопшто кон својата работа?
For young people, I think the most accessible thing for them to do is watch government bodies, go watch the council. I know we heard that they have live stream council meetings. Watch other countries, watch other cities, watch other states, and understand the process and why something might work well and not work well, both in terms of process and policy. And then ask if they can be a mentor, a mentee, or an intern in an office that they think is interesting. The worst that happens is the leader says no, but we get inquiries all the time, and I think it's absolutely needed to invest in younger folks so that they can keep the good work going and feel that even if they themselves don't get into public service, they know that their involvement is really important and matters. On the flip side, you said for council members who already feel like they have enough mandates, is what I heard. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. I think if they are not interested in adding more, there's nothing for them to do. Then I would hope that if they hear enough from their residents that XYZ other thing is needed, they would respond. But for those council members who want to do more, I think it's necessary to have open engagement and constant communication with your residents, whether it's through email, phone, social media, regular town halls, sitting in places where residents go, not just something structured like an urban hub, but places that are really meaningful. I know Clementina experienced Coffee on Your Corner, which is some council members, maybe one Friday a month, will go sit at a coffee shop for hours, and anyone who comes in can talk. I think that sort of engagement and dialogue would inform the council members about what else they could do and hopefully propel them to take the next step and move forward.
Алисон, доколку би можело да го промениш системот на подобро со една мерка, која би била таа?
That's tricky. Maybe, you know what, this is sort of wonky, but having looked at other cities and the ways that they, I guess, track their legislation and promote it on websites, there are ways that those cities have endeavored to make things more accessible to regular people. Like we post our legislation, we have like a very brief write-up, anybody can go find it, but you have to understand what it means, and that's not always easy, and even if it might be easy once you get to it, it's a barrier to entry. I've noticed there are some other cities in the US that follow really great policies where they'll have to write up like a 1-page less than summary in 5th grade English. So I don't know, what is that, like 10-year-old level reading, so that it's something people can understand, and with the costs and the pros and the cons. I think it would be great if we had capacity to add something like that, so that people who want to be involved can do so with a more educated, being more educated on the onset.
Last 3 questions. I will ask first. I need fast answers.
Yeah.
Книга што те инспирирала?
Matilda by Roald Dahl.
Потценета вештина во јавна администрација?
Good listening.
Каде го гледаш Њу Орлеанс за 10 години?
Not bigger and better, but better, with drawing the types of people that want to be there and the types of people we want to maintain as valued in the culture.
Ти благодарам за разговорот. Се надевам дека ти беше пријатно.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I hope any of this is helpful. You know how to reach me if there's ever anything we can share to help Pala.
Thank you, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. That was